Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. Mike Shoesmith, my next guest. Mike and I were having such a great conversation off the air. We just flat ran out of time. Hey, Mike, listen, I'm glad that you're with us today. Now, you've got some pretty big news coming out of Canada that goes directly to some stuff that you and I have been talking about for a long time. Share it with the folks.
Yes, shockwaves hitting the Canadian radio community here, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Let's go back in time here a little bit, because the listeners will know that I've been talking a lot over the years about a guy named David Suzuki.
Mm-hmm.
He's the darling of the Canadian science and TV and radio world. He made headlines back in the 70s for referring to people as, quote, maggots on the earth.
Yeah,
and he became sort of a shock jock in that sort of arena, and he's a zoologist. He has a degree in zoology, and kind of a Richard Dawkins of Canada kind of person.
Yeah, didn't you, Mike? Didn't you say at one time? Didn't you say that he spoke at one of your daughter's graduations or something? Was that the guy?
Yeah, and I think I used my next opportunity to be on the show to go off on that. But he spoke at my daughter graduated from college. I didn't know ahead of time, but he was the commencement speaker for her graduation, and he got up front and he told the entire audience that, hey, listen, you're nothing but animals, and when I was growing up, I fell in nature because I used to go into the woods in my neighborhood as now this is his word, but this is the word that he used to these graduates of college. He said, I was a very horny 14-year-old, and I used to go out into the woods to take care of my business. And that's how I fell in love with nature. And he said, we're all just animals, and my charge to you is to protect the woods around your areas of your spheres of influence so that future generations of 14-year-olds can have some place to go to take care of their business. There you go. Have a nice life.
Oh, my gosh.
So
that was the commencement
to my daughter. That is child abuse. And I think that was my headline for my segment. This was a couple of years ago now. I said, this guy is guilty of child abuse, in my opinion.
Right.
Now, is it something that he should be charged with as a criminal offense? No, because then we get into the whole thought police and free speech and all that. He's entitled to his opinion. However, this guy makes most of his money by collecting by living off of the public dole. He's a welfare scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Because he makes most of his money from CBC. Now, this is important, folks, because this is really shocking news I'm about to tell you here.
What is CBC?
So he makes most of his money from CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Okay.
It's kind of like your NPR.
Yeah.
Except at least NPR has to actually try to get money. CBC, they get $1 billion a year handed to them. Think about that.
What?
In a country with the same population as New York City and the surrounding area,
right?
About 30 million people.
Right.
This radio station gets $1 billion a year to promote this type of child abuse, and that's my opinion.
Right.
That's what they get, $1 billion a year for the radio budget there.
Well,
for CBC, they don't have to petition, they don't have to do any drives or anything like that. And think about this, folks: CBC Radio gets $1 billion a year to run a radio station to promote full-on liberalism.
Yeah.
The conservatism isn't even allowed anywhere near that place.
Yeah.
And yet we have to launch, fundraisers and bake good drives and all that to collect money to buy equipment for hospitals. And we're supposed to have the best socialized medical care in the world.
Yeah.
And all we have here is rationed health care.
Right.
But we're spending the tune of $1 billion a year to run a radio station to promote the mental disorder of liberalism.
I got you.
And yet we have to do fundraisers to raise money to buy MRI machines. How many MRI machines could you buy with $1 billion at $1 million a piece?
Right.
There's a lot of hospital equipment there you could buy. So anyway, we fast forward again to a couple of years back again. David Suzuki is on with Xian Ghomeshi. Remember that name, folks, Xian Ghomeshi. This guy is the new darling of CBC Radio. He's the face of CBC Radio. He's Iranian descent, and he was the #1 talk show host on CBC Radio. Okay, promoting nothing but the homosexual agenda and the false idea of global warming and all of that nonsense, just nonstop, 24/7. Xian Ghomeshi. he had David Suzuki on again a couple of years ago and said, David Suzuki, do you still, you made headlines back in the 70s when you started promoting the idea that people are nothing but animals and quote-unquote maggots on the earth. Do you still stand by that? And Suzuki said, absolutely, I still stand by that. We're all just animals and we're all just maggots on the earth, okay?
Wow.
So here's David Suzuki going on and on about that. And you and I started talking about how this sort of idea leads to spousal abuse, men ruling over women, because after all, women are the weaker sex, and the weaker animal must submit to the stronger after all.
That's what evolution
saying this for a long time.
That's what evolution says. Yeah, the survival of the fittest. I mean, that's in every evolution textbook. So it stands to reason that men generally are the stronger of the two sexes over women generally. And so if we're going to let evolution run its course, then why can't men just abuse women as they wish, right?
Right, and this segment, I have to say, if you can't hear it in my voice, I am outraged by this. And lots of Canadians are thankfully starting to show a little bit of outrage at this, because Jian Ghomeshi this week has been fired from CBC Radio, is under investigation. Now, it started off with a couple of women coming forward to the press and saying, look, Jian Ghomeshi sexually abused me physically. And here's the bruises to prove it. And all of Jian's acolytes came out and said, oh, that's not Jian Ghomeshi. He's a soft-hearted liberal, and, he would never do that. Now, Carl, a dozen women have come out and said, look, this guy is very abusive physically, and he abused me, and he's a sadomasochist, and this man is very abusive toward women. Well, Jian Ghomeshi, what do you think this guy did? He went to his handlers at CBC with pictures of women who he has bruised and abused during these sexual trysts that he's had with them. And CBC went, and he went to the CBC and said, "Look, this just happens. This happens when men have sex with women, that they get hurt and their bodies get bruised and abused, and they run away crying. This just happens." And he took pictures to his boss.
Good gracious!
Think of the entitlement attitude that this person has.
Yeah.
Think of
it's a mental disorder, brother. I mean, the guy's
a mental disorder.
Yeah, he's a sociopath.
So now we have this guy. So then the CBC says, "Well, wait a minute. You just brought us evidence for a crime here." So they finally fired this guy. And listen, folks. Jian Ghomeshi, some of you may have heard of him. He was very popular up here. He was syndicated to NPR in the States. Mm-hmm. So you may have heard him on NPR in the U.S., and he also was on satellite radio. That's how big this guy was. Mm-hmm. Millions of listeners. Mm-hmm. And promoting the liberal agenda, full steam ahead, and rejected any other worldview. And liberalism is defined, now listen to this. I am calling for CBC now to retract their firing of Jian Ghomeshi and take him back into the fold, because liberalism is defined in the dictionary as an unrestricted lifestyle.
Right.
How dare you put restrictions on Jian? How dare you expect there to even be restrictions on Jian Ghomeshi? The man is living a liberal lifestyle. Right. You posted a picture. Well, it wasn't you. It was one of the people over at the ppsimmons Facebook fan page. Mm-hmm. Somebody posted a picture over there. I think it might have been David. He posted a picture of a red car, and the front end was all smashed in on it.
Yeah,
and the front license plate, it said on it, "Obama is my co-pilot."
Right.
And one of the moderators at the ppsimmons fan page wrote, in quotes, "Stop sign? How dare you put restrictions on me?" And that's funny, but it really does illustrate the liberal mindset. Liberalism, as soon as you bring in any restrictions into a life, you're invoking conservative values.
Right.
If you're trying to conserve your driving privileges, you have to stop at stop signs. You have to obey the speed limit. You have to act conservatively. As soon as you remove the restrictions and act like a liberal, you have car wrecks and you have life wrecks. You have people dying when they're 45 because they don't act conservatively with respect to their sexual activity. You have people like Jian Ghomeshi going to his boss with evidence of abuse and saying, look, why are you restricting me? I mean, I'm just acting like a liberal. And his boss, and even his boss had to say, look, Jian, you've crossed the line here. Well, listen, in liberalism, there is no line.
Right.
As soon as you say there's a line, you're saying that conservatism has merit.
Right.
You're agreeing with Margaret Thatcher, who said, look, the facts of life are conservative.
Are conservative. That's right. That's right. And in liberalism, I mean, who draws the line? I mean, look, if there is no God, if the Word of God is just a bunch of fairy tales, if the Bible is, meaningless, and evolution doesn't say that God is dead. Evolution says there never was a God. It's just all one big cosmic accident. Well, then who gets to make the rules? Where are the standards? From where do we begin? And so the standards shift continually. And if evolution is really how we got here, through the survival of the fittest, then it stands to reason. Why should we get in the way of this guy? Why should we stop? I mean, after all, it's just evolution taking its course, right? I mean, why should we save the whales? Why should we save the turtles? I mean, shouldn't evolution just be allowed to take its course?
Well, we live in a world governed by the aggressive use of force. When you see a whale beached on the beach, why not just let it die? I mean, why even bother?
Right.
But we live in a world that, the Bible says we have to be good stewards of the earth and subdue it. That's why we run down to the beach to try and get the whale back in the water.
Right,
because
exactly.
we're trying to be good stewards of what God has given us, the charge that God has given us. And I guess, listen, let me bottom line this for you guys.
All right, bottom line it, and then we've got to take a time out, Mike. Go ahead and bottom line it.
It's time to end funding of CBC or rehire Jian Ghomeshi and finally admit what kind of an organization you are. I say it's time to pull all the money from that demonic organization.